Friend Crush. I'm your host, Amber Akilla. I'm a DJ and a creative consultant. This is my podcast where I talk about stuff and things, cute, chaotic, and critical thinking. You can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter at Amber Akilla, and for mixes and music on Spotify and SoundCloud. Thank you for tuning in to another episode. Welcome if you're new here. I hope everyone is doing well. And the original title of this episode was You Were Not Born to Be Ugly or Have a Bad Time. And it was basically like my kind of life philosophy and affirmation that I returned to. But since recording it, I've sort of had to think about it, and I've decided to reframe to You're hot, having a good time, so we can speak in like a positive way. But I've kept the original episode anyway, so that you can see like my original train of thought. And then I think that you can either take it, you can start from You Were Not Born to Be Ugly or Have a Bad Time, like I did, or you can just skip straight to I'm hot and having fun. I think that, you know, even though we do want to try to get into positive self-talk, positive vibration, etc., sometimes it is helpful to go through each process. So you might start from a negative place or a place of self-loathing, self-criticism, and then you can get to a place of neutrality, of radical acceptance, and then you can move into a place of self-love and positivity. I think that that is definitely something that has benefited me, because when I'm in the depths of my despair, it's very hard to swing from that into a place of everything's great, I'm having a great time. And sometimes I need to go from to just being sad and angry, negatively charged, to just being like, this is what it is, it's okay, you're going to figure this out. And then into, I'm grateful for what I have, I'm grateful for the opportunities I have, I'm grateful for this lesson. And then into, okay, I'm so happy that I've learned something, I'm feeling hopeful, I feel excited, I feel empowered. So that's kind of like the journey from You Were Not Born to Be Ugly or Have a Bad Time into I'm hot and having fun. And ultimately, like for me, I think it's important to have a bit of sense of humor in terms of how we approach life. And it can be hard to do that sometimes, because it can be really overwhelming thinking about what we don't have control over, what do we have control over, what can or can't we influence. And I was just thinking about how sometimes I just have to laugh at the fact that I'm frustrated about wanting to control something that I can't control. Like, that's so absurd when you think about it, but I find myself trying to do that so often. I'm like, oh my God, why isn't this going the way that I wanted it to? I'm so annoyed. And then I'm just like, you're funny for thinking that you could change or influence or have control over this thing that you ultimately have no control over. And I think that technology plays a really big part in the illusion of thinking that we can influence things, thinking that we're connected to something, thinking that we can convince somebody who we don't even know that well about something that they don't really care about or whatever. Like, I see this so much online on social media. And it's like, I always think about how hard it is to even just convince somebody that you're physically close to, that you might be emotionally close to, of something that they're not going to move on, and vice versa. So sometimes all we can do is laugh at the absurdity of our irrational desires. You know what I mean? Laugh it off, and then focus on the things that we really can dedicate energy to, and we can actually move through and feel progress in. And obviously that's easier said than done. And I mean, more and more for me, like, even in my ability to recognize the privilege that I have, it's still hard for me. And I think that that's just a reality that we need to face. Like, it's not easy for anybody. It's all relative. Yes, privilege is real. Yes, having material privilege is going to give you certain advantages. But I know a lot of privileged people who are not emotionally, spiritually empowered. So that's also something to remind ourselves of when we find ourselves comparing to other people and wishing we had something that other people had that we feel that we don't have. Focus on what you do have. Recognize that every single moment in your life has led up to this exact point, and radically accept where you're at. And then you can start to really think about the way that you can accumulate positive action, positive thought towards something that really does matter to you, something that you do really want. Start building momentum. Easier said than done. The road isn't necessarily going to be without bumps and challenges, but I believe in you, honey. And without further ado, you are not born to be ugly or have a bad time, also known as you are hot and having fun. Hope everyone is doing well. I am excited for today's topic. It's you are not born to be ugly or have a bad time. This is basically my current life sort of mantra / philosophy that I guess I've been using maybe over the last 2 years mostly. It's always kind of been in the back of my mind in some ways. And I say current because I do think it's important to keep an open mind and adjust the way that you approach life at different stages in your life. And whether I was conscious of it or not, at different stages of my life, I was kind of being driven or motivated by different things in my, like, I don't know, subconscious or whatever. And I think now that I'm trying to be more intentional and trying to find ways to ground myself in spite of all of the things that are out of my control, in spite of all the chaos, I have definitely found that I just take things a lot less personally. I'm able to sort of de-escalate much more efficiently as well. Because at the end of the day, I feel like there's this idea that you just reach a point in your life where you're totally healed and everything is easy breezy and all your problems go away if you just work a specific job, if you just have a specific relationship, if you just live in a certain place. And nothing in life is really that simple, but we're always sold this idea of like some sort of magic solution, silver bullet that's going to make all our suffering end. But as I've said before, I feel like the bullshit never stops. Only our ability to deal with the bullshit can improve to the point where you're less fazed by whatever bullshit comes your way, you know? And I think that if you can remind yourself of that, then it will just help you to sort of like snap out of any moments where you're being led astray by feelings or by thoughts that don't necessarily serve whatever your long-term goals are or whatever you've decided that you're here to achieve. So the saying that I've been using is you were not born to be ugly or have a bad time. That is what I tell myself whenever I feel like I just need to ground myself. And it sounds superficial, but it works for me. And I think that it can be helpful for people to try and develop their own saying or use the one that I use, whatever, it's up to you. But I'll give you context for like this saying, how it works for me, what it means to me, what it represents to me, and then maybe that can help you to figure out what might work for you, whether it's the same thing or something different. Because for me, I feel like a lot of the sort of new age, spiritual, I don't know how to describe it. You know what I mean? Like Instagram, infographic, deep, fake deep, whatever sayings. I don't find them that helpful, I think, because I still find certain things cringe to a degree. And then it kind of like, I sort of dismiss them as helpful, even though like there's truth to what those things are saying. Like, you are enough, you are blah, blah, blah. Like, yes, it's true, but it doesn't hit the way that I need it to hit in order for it to be effective for me. So I think just because like my sense of humor is a little bit more cynical, a little bit self-deprecating, and I don't want to get rid of the way that my brain works, but I can do mental gymnastics in a way that means that it is serving me or like serving a positive purpose in my life and not one that's like enabling downward spirals, if you know what I mean. You know, like there's self-deprecating humor that is self-aware and that is, you know, keeping things silly, goofy. And then there's self-deprecating humor that really like cuts into your self-worth and can like warp and shape the way that you see yourself in the world and your relationships. So that's something that I try to be mindful of. And you are not born to be ugly or have a bad time is helpful to me. And I'm going to describe to you why. So let's start with the first part. You were not born. Okay. Well, we are born, we are here, and we did not choose to be born, and yet we are here. So life is really what you make of it. Even though we consciously know and are aware of all the different ways that we've been conditioned to think that we have to live a certain way, it can actually be really hard in practice to figure out what we want to do, how we want to live for ourselves. That is basically our life's work. You know, you're born with no intention to be born, then into a family, into a body, into a skin suit. You're given all this messaging, education, etc., told that you should be a certain way, told that you should think a certain way, behave a certain way, and then it may or may not be true to who you really are. And it can be really hard to find the difference between like where you start, where you end, and then like other people's idea of you or what you should do begins, if that makes any sense. I genuinely think that's our life's work, you know, even though I feel like I've made so much progress in the past few years in terms of better understanding myself, better maintaining, honoring my boundaries, etc., etc. It's still ongoing, you know. It's not like the urge to just throw away all my progress and be self-destructive isn't there anymore, but just my ability to manage that is better because I have a clearer idea of like who I want to be, what I want to do. So we did not choose to be born, but here we are. Life is what we make of it. You were not born to be ugly. Okay, so I'm not one of those people who thinks that it's cool to like not care about how you look. I do think it's cool to not derive all of your self-worth from your physical appearance or from validation of it. And I think there is a difference between those two things. Obviously, when we discuss things like the beauty myth and the impact of beauty standards on society, it is a complicated topic because on the one hand, I think people are visual creatures. You're given eyes for a reason. And there are a lot of subconscious calculations that go on in our head when it comes to like interacting with people, connecting with people. Of course, there is a visual element to it. And I do think there is something to be said about being intentional with the way that you present yourself. And that doesn't mean that it has to be in a way that is upheld or pedestaled by society or in line with certain beauty standards. But there's a difference between like being well presented and being poorly presented that doesn't have anything to do with whether you adhere to beauty standards, quote unquote, if that makes sense, you know, like, so you were not born to be ugly. Being hot from your subjective experience is more enjoyable than not being hot. And I don't mean hot in terms of beauty standards. I mean hot as in like a state of mind, feeling comfortable and confident in who you are, not having to constantly worry about the way that you're being perceived by other people. Of course, it's something that we need to consider because we are social animals and we connect with people, and that's a really important part of being alive. But that doesn't mean that it's what defines us, right? There is so much more to you as a person than just your physical appearance, but you can't deny that your physical appearance and how you present yourself impacts the way that you relate to yourself and the world. So I think, you know, being able to take the time to understand your body, understand how you feel, what resonates with you aesthetically, visually. It could be really simple, it could be really over the top. Everyone is going to be different, but being able to do that, obviously there is a privilege in that. But if you have the privilege, taking that time instead of thinking that you just need to be up to date with a trend or you just need to be validated in a certain way, I think that being able to see yourself as a whole person and see how you present that to the world as an important part, but not the only part, helps a lot in my mind. You know, there is a game that we do need to play living in a society. You have different masks for different roles, different relationships, different settings, but behind all those things is like you as your authentic self. And when you can understand like, okay, I'm going to a party, this is the persona that I've got on, but I come home, I don't have to feel like I need to embody this party persona at all times. I'm going to work, I need to make sure I present myself in a certain way, communicate in a certain way to make sure that I'm working as part of a team, blah, blah, blah. You know, like it's okay that there are different sides of you that are expressed in different ways in different settings. And your physical appearance is not going to be the thing that has to define you and who you are. It's part of you, but it's not all of you. And I think, it's normal for us to kind of swing across the pendulum from caring too much about our physical appearance to not caring at all. And sometimes you do need to swing in order to find that middle ground. Like, I think there was definitely a stage in my life where I felt like I was worthless without approval about my physical appearance or without being able to be considered desirable. I think a lot of women go through that. Whether I was conscious of it or not, I look back on that time and I'm like, yeah, I really cared a lot more about how I looked and being validated for that and not being true to who I was because I didn't feel like, I don't know, I think I just wasn't in the right environment and there wasn't much that I felt encouraged me to explore who I was outside of just my appearance. And I think, social media probably had a lot to do with that. So I feel like I went from caring too much, realizing that I was caring too much. And then the way that I challenged myself out of that mindset was to care less in terms of how I was approaching my appearance. So from thinking that I needed to always be done up, that I always needed to have makeup and like insecure without makeup, I would then go, okay, I'm not going to wear any makeup and go out into the world and remind myself that I'm not going to die from people not thinking them pretty or from me not wearing makeup. Like, I'm not suddenly like an ogre because I'm not wearing it. And also being able to have confidence from within, being comfortable without wearing makeup. It sounds like so trivial for this to be such a small thing, but it kind of amazes me how much of an impact that it had on me. And I don't know if anybody else relates, but I'm just sharing my experience because, like, there are certain times in my life where I felt like I was ugly without makeup and I would not be considered desirable if I wasn't wearing makeup. And then I would slowly like reduce the amount of makeup I was wearing. I mean, I was never like full glam, but reducing the amount of makeup I was wearing, like going out with dudes, going on dates where I was wearing little to no makeup and still having a good time and not realizing that they didn't actually really care that much about the details of my physical appearance. Like, they can be attracted to you generally without being like, oh, she's not wearing mascara, therefore she's not attractive to me anymore. Like, people don't really think like that. And anybody that does needs to get a fucking life anyway. So I still wanted to be presentable, but I was just like challenging the way that I saw myself and how I defined and understood my own beauty, because I feel like I've always had an ability to find beauty in anything, really. I think that, the world that we live in, despite the insanity that it is, there is so much beauty around us. And I don't think that beauty is defined by beauty standards either. I think that anybody can be beautiful, have beautiful energy. And that's what hotness as a state of mind is. Like, I love people who don't care about trends, who can go into detail about why they love this one specific item of clothing that looks so mundane, but like this connection that they have with it, or people who are able to put an outfit together out of really unexpected things. Like, those are the things that are the most interesting to me, not like being able to follow a trend or whatever. And there's nothing wrong with trends, but I'm just saying, like, if you feel like you need to if you feel like the only way that you can be cool is to do what other people are doing, that's not true. To me, the coolest thing is somebody's ability to be true to themselves and be authentic, even if that's different to me. And I think that when you are coming from a place of insecurity and you're not sure of yourself, that's when you need other people to be like you, to think the same way that you do, to have the same opinions as you do, to like the same things that you like, in order to feel more secure in yourself. But you actually have to generate that inner confidence, that inner security. And it just takes practice, like, it wasn't overnight that I was able to go from deriving a lot of my self-worth from my appearance to not really deriving my self-worth from my appearance. I don't know. I think still in general, I always valued like being considered articulate, or people thinking that I'm funny, or people thinking that something that I've made or done is cool. That's always been more important, or like a more meaningful engagement than just physical appearance. But I just think as a woman in general, like that's something that we all struggle with to a degree, or something that we have no choice but to think about because it's so deeply ingrained in the messaging we receive. I mean, anybody that hasn't been through that, I would love to know what that's like. I envy you for sure. But I also learned a lot from that experience, and it has allowed me to appreciate so many different parts of myself and other people that aren't just about how we look. You know, there's something you can appreciate it in each other, in yourself, but it's not the only thing. And ironically, like when I was super depressed and my skin was bad and my health wasn't really that good, when I started to worry less about superficial things and superficial validation, that's when my skin started to clear up, when I was able to actually exercise because I recognized it was important for my mental health and my general well-being, and not just because I was trying to lose weight that I didn't really need to lose anyway, or I felt that I needed to lose in order to be happy or in order to be desirable. It's like that didn't really affect it as much as my subjective experience was. So that's why like not being ugly and not having a bad time are connected, because when I was having a bad time, that was being reflected in my physical appearance. And then when your spirit is clouded, then your appearance also becomes clouded. I look at old photos of myself and I can see like how sad I looked in my eyes, and maybe other people can't see it, maybe they can, but you know, me being able to look back and think, damn, I was really going through it. And I hadn't fully clocked like my own ability to be in control of how I felt and what I did. I was still kind of running off what other people were telling me or what I felt like other people wanted from me, and not what I truly wanted. And over time, practicing getting in touch with what I wanted and who I wanted to be and what my goals were is what ultimately freed me from that state of mind, you know. And it took time as well. I'm not saying like overnight. That's why it's something that I repeat to myself. You were not born to be ugly or have a bad time. There are little ways that you can restructure your day and move things around so that you can slowly start to do this. Because I don't think that, you know, you need to go on a 3-week-long retreat on some island in the middle of nowhere or to a temple or ashram in order to make these sorts of changes in your life. Because even if you did do that, you would still come back to your day-to-day life and then need to figure out a way to integrate what you learned. So I think start small, 10 minutes a day where you do something different to what you currently do. If you feel like you're in a rut, is going to make such a huge difference. It's going to accumulate, and it's going to be more effective than thinking like, okay, tomorrow I'm going to wake up and then I'm going to work out for 2 hours and then I'm going to only eat salad and then I'm going to blah, blah, blah. Like little baby steps, being able to integrate quote unquote wellness into your day-to-day life, boundaries, building a foundation for who you are, being able to center yourself so that it's easier to reconnect is more effective than just spending a week, you know, in a temple somewhere meditating. That's just my opinion and what I've observed. Anytime I've tried to do some like overnight health kick haul of my life, it's lasted not even a day, you know, because it's such a drastic change from the pattern that you're used to. When you can just make small changes, it's so much more manageable, and then reward yourself for doing those little things. If you did a 5-minute meditation most mornings of a week, then that is better than doing no meditation. You know, if you were able to journal out the way that you felt when you're feeling like you're going in a downward spiral, when usually you wouldn't, that is already a huge thing. Like all of these little things make such a big difference, and we're not told that they do, or we don't believe that they do, because we live in this like hyper consumerist world where we're constantly being messaged that we need this app, we need to buy this program, we need to hire this person to fix our life. Oh, if we just go to therapy, my problems will go away. Like therapy is also something that you have to participate in. You have to be a willing participant. It's not something that just happens to you. And I think we don't realize the way that deep in our subconscious we're waiting for something to come and save us. At least that's how I realized I was thinking. And I still get into that thinking too, where it's like, when will it end? When will my problems go away? When will something come along and I just won't have to think about all this shit anymore? But it's like, only our ability to handle life and the bullshit improves. There's nothing that we can do that's going to end the bullshit entirely. And I think when you take that approach to everything in life, whether it's personal, political, spiritual, it's just so freeing, because then you're not trying to control and think about all these things that no matter how hard you think about it, there's nothing that you could really do about it anyway. So remember, you were not born to be ugly or have a bad time. What does it mean to have a bad time? So more and more I ask myself, what is the point of being alive if you're not having fun? You know, I did not ask to be born, and I have enough privilege that I have resources available to me to ensure that I can manage my mental health. I can recenter myself when needed, and I don't think it's something that you need to be super rich for. And I do think for the most part, at least the audience that listens to this podcast, you know, we're probably lucky to have a roof over our heads, have some sort of education, we have internet access, we probably have friends, people we care about, we get to eat delicious food, we get to have fun, unforgettable experiences. We also have space to experience the mundane and appreciate what it's like to just be bored and have nothing to do and binge watch TV shows, whatever, you know, like it's all relative. But what is the point of being alive if you're not having fun? At least most of the time, at least in a way that you're like working towards enjoying your life, right? And sometimes we do get into a trap where it's just like suffering after suffering after suffering. And that is also part of life too, like having those contrasting experiences in order to appreciate them. And I think that a lot of hard times are what define later good times. You know, once you are learning from an experience, then you're kind of adding to your toolkit of ways that you can understand and approach life in a more intentional way if you really do take those challenges as opportunities. And it's not fun. I don't mean fun in terms of like what looks good to other people, like what you share about your life that other people envy. It's fun in terms of like your subjective experience. Am I enjoying my life right now? Not am I able to share my life in a way that other people can enjoy it, but am I enjoying my life? You know, like even when I'm bored, I can still find enjoyment in doing nothing. It's truly fun for me to be able to have time to myself where I don't have to be anywhere, don't have to do anything, and I can just figure out how I'm going to entertain myself. But that's what's fun for me, and I think what's fun for people is going to be different. And the point is for everyone to figure out what those things are in any given moment, in any given stage of their life. Because we do think that fun is like, how do I make my life look appealing to other people? Sometimes. But it's more important like how you feel. I always think about this Justin Bieber interview that I read. I think it's the Vogue one with him and Hailey, just after they got married. And the way that he talks about his relationship with music is so sad because, you know, he's so talented as a child, crazy superstar level of fame at such a young age. And he just seemed so defeated in terms of his relationship with music, in terms of the experience that he had being so famous, being taken advantage of by people around him that were making money off him. Like all these people that work behind the scenes around him profited, probably bought houses, probably paid for their kids' education off of his fame, off of working for him, with him. And even though he's rich and famous, the thing that he loves, the thing that he was like born to do, has been run into the ground, like almost taken away from him. And it's not like he'll never be able to release music again. I mean, he has in the last few years. I haven't listened to it. But it's just like, he's so young. Like I think he's similar age to me or like a year younger. And he feels like he's experienced everything. Like, his life is over. He's so young, and imagine not even being like, just getting into your late 20s and thinking that your life is over. Like, life is so fucking long. I always talk to people that are like in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and there's so much more to experience. And we think that, oh, when we're 30, we just become irrelevant. And I think that is something that society does, like, low-key tell you, and social media definitely exacerbates, but there's no need to worry about those things, because we see someone like him and his fame and his success from the outside. It's like, oh my God, he has so much money, he can do whatever he wants, blah, blah, blah. But his subjective experience of all that wasn't as lit as it looked. So it's like, what was all of that for? Like, if you were in that position, what was all of that for? If all these other people were able to profit off you, enjoy your art, but you don't even get to enjoy it, you're like traumatized from fame. Your parents basically sold you off to a record label. Like, your dad posted a picture of your dick on Twitter. Like, what the hell? That's insane. So I think when you can focus on like what makes you happy, what is fun for you in this moment, not just what is going to be fun for the people around you or the people watching you, then it actually becomes easier to set boundaries. And of course, there are going to be times where there is discomfort as well, but it's like, how do you contextualize that? And I've said before, there's a difference between discomfort that is in service of your personal growth. So this might be challenges in work, challenges at school, challenges in a relationship of any kind where you're both working through it together, right? It's a situation where you and your friend, you and your partner, you and your family member recognize that you need to go through whatever you're going through together, and you've got each other's backs, and, you know, the light is at the end of the tunnel. That is different to when you're in a relationship with someone and you don't feel like you're on the same team, and you're asking everybody around you what to do, how to approach something. You're not able to communicate with them clearly. That is not discomfort that's necessarily in service of your personal growth when you're pushing in that direction. So personal challenges that require you to move out of your comfort zone in order to learn and to grow, that is discomfort that's in service of your personal growth. When you're able to see, okay, I don't enjoy sitting at my desk, having to do this homework, having to do this work, but I can recognize that I'm getting a learning experience from it. I can recognize I'm getting paid for it. I can recognize that I'm not going to be doing this forever, and this is important for my long-term goal of whatever your long-term goal is. So that is different to the discomfort that comes at the expense of your personal boundaries and your sense of self. So that would be when you're minimizing yourself to please others, when you're not communicating your needs and you're hoping that other people can just assume them for you, or when you're taking on other people's responsibilities in order to feel useful, in order to try to maintain a connection with someone who you otherwise feel like would just discard of you. So you're basically allowing yourself to be taken for granted, and you're in some ways like evading your own responsibilities by taking on someone else's. Like, I think my therapist mentioned to me that that's actually avoidant behavior, where you try to plug into other people's problems at your own expense. It's something that I used to have a tendency of doing, and I still have to remind myself, like, other people's problems are their problems. I can be here to support them and cheer them on, but I don't have to get into the ring with them if I'm not involved in that in any way, you know? Also, if you're not walking away from a situation where you're not being treated the way that you need to be treated in order to feel safe and in order to reach those long-term goals. And it can be hard for us to figure out what that line is, and it's not like you just wake up and you realize, okay, yep, sorry, I'm done here. Usually it's like a cumulative process of like little microaggressions that accumulate over time, and you realize, oh, okay, I'm not actually being true to who I am. I'm not being treated in a way that makes me feel respected. I'm having difficulty feeling connected to what I'm doing, understanding where this fits into my life. Okay, now I need to plan how I can exit this in a way that is going to make the transition somewhat smooth, to make sure that I'm maintaining a sense of security or whatever it is. Yeah, it can be hard to figure out what the difference between discomfort in service of our personal growth, discomfort that is actually at the expense of our boundaries and our sense of self. Because you might have to go through something where you've experienced this discomfort that's at the expense of your sense of self, in order to then have the opportunity to know, okay, now I need to go through discomfort that's in service of my personal growth. Like you're in a point where you're feeling minimized, you feel disrespected, and sometimes you can get comfortable in that place. You know, like if you're in a toxic friendship and you're just so used to knowing this person who puts you down or doesn't really care about your feelings, doesn't really care about what you want, that can be familiar and that can feel almost comfortable because of the familiarity. And then to get to a place where you're doing something in service of your personal growth, you need to experience discomfort, which might be confronting that this friendship is no longer working for you, distancing yourself from this person that doesn't respect you or that you've just grown apart from. So it's not like a hard line necessarily, but there is sometimes like a transition between those two things. And you might realize that you might think that you're doing something in service of your personal growth and telling yourself that, like, okay, for example, if I just lose X number of kilos, then I'm going to be happy. And I just have to keep going to the gym every single day and suffering through this so that I can be happy once I've lost weight. So you might tell yourself this, but then at some point you might realize, okay, this is actually I'm actually losing my sense of self in this because I'm defining my self-worth by my weight, which doesn't need to be defined that way. Another approach could be, I want to feel comfortable and confident in my body, and the discomfort that I need to endure for that might just be exercising once or twice a week to start off with in a way that feels comfortable for me but also challenging. That way I'm able to do something that's in service of my personal growth without also having to create a discomfort that is unnecessary and ultimately damaging to my self-worth. So another example might be you're working in a job for however long and you get to a point where you're not learning anything anymore, or you feel like you're not being respected for the work that you do, your time isn't being valued, and you might say to yourself, like, okay, I need to continue doing this job and suffering through this because I'm not going to find another job that's better than this. I'm not going to be able to make more money than this. I'm going to be unhappy if I leave here, if I don't have the prestige of working for this company or working with these people, whatever. When in reality, it's like you're closing yourself off to other opportunities when you think that way. And instead you might say, okay, I'm not happy with where I'm at now, and I want to transition out, but I can be mindful about how I do that. It's not like I have to wake up and then quit in like a dramatic rage. I can start piecing together some sort of plan in order to go through this discomfort that's going to allow me to grow in a direction that allows for more opportunities to come, more fun to come, right? So it's not easy, but I feel like You Were Not Born to Be Ugly or Have a Bad Time can encompass this very well, because when you're having a bad time, you get wrinkles and then you become quote unquote ugly. I mean, people with wrinkles aren't ugly, but you know, metaphorically speaking, or for me to do some mental gymnastics around it, it's like, I want to have fun because that means I'm going to be relaxed, I'm going to feel confident and self-assured. And if I am not having fun and prolonging my suffering, you know, suffering happens in life, but do we prolong it? We don't need to, because uncomfortable feelings usually are like a 90-second physiological reaction in our body. But the way that we drag out suffering is with the stories that we tell ourselves in our mind. So what need only be 90 seconds of discomfort sometimes becomes days, months, years of suffering because we're running the story through our head all the time. And I think that that's where like meditation and journaling helps, because you're observing your thoughts in meditation is like taking out the trash for yourself mentally. Like I've said before, you know, you can't have new things in your life without removing old things, whether that's people, clothing, furniture, gadgets. Same with your thoughts. You know, how are you going to have new interesting thoughts if the old ones are still swirling around? And it's just like distance with those things helps as much as removing them from your life. You know, I think that in terms of friendships and relationships. You don't just have to cut people out, but you can create distance with some people in order to create room for other people. Different stages of your life require different things. So if I'm overthinking in a downward spiral direction, or I'm getting bogged down in discomfort that is at the expense of my sense of self, at the expense of my boundaries, that is going to causes like physical reactions in your body. It causes illness. It causes imbalances in your body, which then affects your spirit, the skin suit. You know, like your spirit is contained in this skin suit for you to move through this world. And if you're not comfortable in your skin suit, then how is your spirit going to be able to live out its full potential? You know what I mean? So many health risks are associated with stress, from heart disease, cancer, skin issues, everything. It's literally like drinking poison when we allow stress to take over our lives. I've heard of so many people who, after undergoing treatment for cancer, they had to do a full life overhaul. They realized how much anger and stress they carried with themselves all the time. And they became so much more mindful of managing their emotions. And obviously, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a health professional. I'm just going off experience and things that I've heard, things I've observed. And we definitely underplay the impact that mental health has on our general well-being. I think now we're starting to understand it more, but I still feel like there's still so much missing in terms of how we educate people, educate ourselves on the importance of mind-body connection, because we live in a world that is so focused on just external things and the pursuit of more, acquisition of things. And it's like, none of that means anything if you don't have a subjectively pleasant experience. Like a lot of people, and this has always been so clear to me because I grew up with privilege around a lot of people who had insane amounts of privilege, and so many of them are miserable. They were miserable when I was younger and they're still miserable now. And you would think that, because they have so much wealth, because they have so much status, that all of their problems go away. More money, more problems for a reason. And it breaks my heart to see people that I care about who have all the access they could possibly need to help to being able to not be ugly or have a bad time, and they just can't do it. They feel so stuck in who they are because they're constantly being told that they should just be happy with what they have as it is, but they can't embrace that because they're so disconnected. I don't really care if people think I'm hot or not. I care about how I feel. And it's like, you don't need to care about what other people think about you. You need to care about how you feel. Do you feel hot? Do you feel like you're having a good time? That is what is most important at the end of the day, because nobody else is experiencing your life for you as you. They can see it from the outside, but how they see it is going to be dependent on their experience of their life, So finding the balance between being true to yourself and still feeling connected to the world around you, I think, is our life's work. And you were not born to be ugly or have a bad time. That's what I tell myself. If I'm facing like a sort of challenging period in work, I'm fighting the urge to just give up and have a temper tantrum. So I think to myself, well, it's worth going through this and trying to be intentional with how I manage it so that I can learn what to do, how to approach these sorts of situations if it ever comes up again. Then I'm also getting paid, so this is going towards my being superficially hot and fund. So then I'm able to contextualize like what the reason of all of this shit is. What is the reason for the bullshit? And it's because I was not born to be ugly or have a bad time. And if it's like dire situation, then I'm able to be like, okay, this is dire. I'm having the worst time. What can I do to get back to a place where I'm feeling like I'm not ugly and I'm not having a bad time? And the best example I have of this is how I've managed my time in the last 2 years being stuck in Perth, because ultimately so much is out of my control, as is with a lot of us that are living through this panini. And I could still be in a place where I'm resentful of being stuck here, where I feel like I have no control over anything, where I'm just angry and sad all the time. But I realized that I had to radically accept the situation as it was and then find the little gaps in between where I could actually do things with intention, where I could actually take some control. To the point where even though I'm feeling like much closer to getting back to Shanghai, I have an opportunity to go back, I'm not like so desperate for it because I also believe in divine timing. And it's like I know that no matter what situation I'm in, I have the tools available to reconnect with myself and then figure out what I want to do, you know? And it's hard to do that. But again, I just think it's our life's work to figure out what those things are. As long as you can do things that make you feel in control of your time and your energy, in spite of all the things that you don't have control over, then that's really the best that we can do, you know? And then figuring out which areas we can be assertive in, which areas we can ask for help in. So yeah, you were not born to be ugly or have a bad time, and neither was I. And it doesn't mean that there aren't going to be challenges, because unfortunately that's life. But I just think our ability to respond to challenges can improve if we accept the challenge. And that's all I have to say for today. So yeah, I hope that you're doing well, you're doing okay. If you're not doing so well, remember that it always gets worse before it gets better, unfortunately. Every time it gets worse, you know that you're closer to it getting better at some point because it can't be shit forever, basically. And it can feel like it's going to be shit forever. But when you accept that it's not going to be shit forever while it's shit, I actually think that helps so much in being able to just kind of like take a little bit of a step back and not claw onto a situation or claw onto the idea of something in desperation. And then you just let time do its thing. You focus on the things you can control. Remember that you weren't born to be ugly or have a bad time, and you're going to be all Jeezy, okay? I believe in you. And I need to remind myself to believe in myself just as much. So yeah, thanks for listening. Let me know what you thought of this episode. Let me know if you have any sayings or like affirmations that you use to ground yourself, or if you were not born to be ugly or have a bad time is something that you might try out. If you do try it out, let me know. You know, let some time pass experimenting with this and get back to me in a few weeks or months. And yeah, stay hydrated, tell your friends and family that you love them, and go be a better person. Yay! Bye!